Thank you. The next item on our agenda is celebrations. Mr. Sutterth.
Good eve, good evening, board members. Hope you all are having a wonderful evening. It's about to get more wonderful because we're going to open up our celebrations with the Student of the Month for March. And I would like to invite the team from Riverside High School to come in and introduce her to you.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. As the new principal of Riverside High School, I am honored and delighted to introduce our DPS Student of the Month. Her achievements are remarkable, as well as her growth as a person. My first interaction with this cadet was when I went to her class to announce that she had been nominated by her teacher, Major Belly, for the DPS Student of the Month. I said to her, I don't want to spoil the surprise. However, I would like to take this opportunity to get to know you and to just chat, to learn a little bit more about you. She thanked me graciously and stated, I'm glad that it is you, my principal, sharing this information with me. I observed her to be very respectful, intelligent, charismatic, articulate, and just a very, very kind person. Since that encounter, I have observed her ability to demonstrate leadership with the cadets and the positive way she encourages and interacts with her group. As a senior at Riverside, she excels both in the classroom and outside of the classroom. She currently maintains a 4.0 weighted grade point average and a 3.77 unweighted average. She carries this average while being a part of our junior ROTC and our award-winning engineering program. Upon graduation, she plans to defer college for 1 year to complete her military training that begins in July and ends in December of this year. She has been accepted and plans to attend UNC Chapel Hill in the fall of 2023, where she will study accounting and Korean. She also plans to join the ROTC at Chapel Hill and become an officer in the military. She has been awarded over $18,500 in scholarships and more to come. In addition to school, extracurricular activities and community service, she likes to spend time with family and friends. When asked about her goals and aspirations, she stated, my number one goal in life is to support my family and help others in ways I've been supported growing up. I hope to become a mentor and aid future generations in achieving their dreams. Ladies and gentlemen, I present Group Commander Brianna Aguilar as our DPS Student of the Month.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate, this honor. I honestly, if I'm being honest, I never knew about Student of the Month until I was nominated. And then once I found out about it, it was an incredible achievement in my life that I never thought that I would get. I worked hard and I've never thought that I'd be able to get such an accomplishment. So I'm really grateful that sorry, I don't mean to cry. I'm really grateful that I have people in my life to be able to nominate me and support me and get myself up here. I used to be a really shy person. You would never see me out in the front. I never would imagine myself in the ROTC program or in the military, engineering, or any of that kind of stuff. But I had people to support me and tell me that I was amazing to the point that now I'm here. So I'm really grateful for those people.
So I have a couple of things to give you, and then I'm going to have you put them down because you're going to have to walk a red carpet and do some fist bumps, and it's hard to do when you're holding things. First, I'd like to give you the certificate of our appreciation as Student of the Month, and I'd like to hold it at a certain angle so that Mr. Cunningham here can take a picture of it, because that's the way we do things around here. Dr. Mabenga? Brianna, our Spark recognition program presents you with a pin that probably isn't exactly regulation for what you're wearing now. But the Spark pin is a mark of leadership for our students, our faculty and staff, our community members who show leadership and commitment to the ideals of Durham Public Schools. So I'd like you to have this pin as well. Yeah. And then finally, thanks to our friends at Triangle E-Cycling and Larry Hurst, we have a laptop for you to do engineering with, and it's a good laptop. So all of this is for you.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations on being our Student of the Month, and I can take that back from you so you can, you and your mom can receive the ovation from our board members. Thank you. Congratulations. Our next Spark presentation comes to us. It is that time of year again where you are going to get to meet and celebrate our of the years. And your of the year tonight is going to be our school social worker of the year. And I would like our team to come in and introduce her to you.
Good evening, members of the board and Dr. Mabenga. I am honored to be before you tonight to present the 2021-22 DPS School Social Worker of the Year. Before I begin, I would like to give a quick shout out to all the DPS social workers, as I always do. It is my pleasure to collaborate and support them each day. They are the cornerstones of their schools and have been great in providing support to families and connecting them to resources. The DPS School Social Worker of the Year, Tamiko Pagee, is a school social worker who serves Burton Elementary School. She has earned this honor by being nominated and voted upon by her fellow social worker peers. Tamiko was nominated by several of her coworkers, and I would like to read a brief comment by one of them. Tamiko does so much for her students, families, and staff at Burton, most of which goes unnoticed because she is such a humble soul. She is always available in crisis situations for her school, answers calls for her principal, even after hours and on vacation. She goes above for her Queens group and is an overall fantastic school social worker. I admire Tamiko for seeing her own potential and striving to be better social worker today than she was yesterday. Yes, Tamiko should be honored for her hard work and passion for children at DPS. Ms. Pagee is a phenomenal leader, school social worker, and role model while being a support to a great school community. She has formed many positive connections in the community. There are many things Ms. Pagee is involved in at Burton. One program allows students to get free Nike gym shoes every year, which improves the recipient's self-esteem. Also, she has implemented a staff snack cart with grant funds and was able to continue it with the help of community partners. Ms. Pagee wears many hats as she is on the school improvement team, student support check-in team, the MTSS team, the school wellness team, AP interview team, and leads the school attendance teams. She is also a co-chair of the district's Queens Girls of Color program at Burton. Tamiko received 3 grants this year for her school efforts: the Wellness Support School Reopening Grant, Burton Parent Mentor Partnership, and the Ramtastic Support Project. In addition, she is the chairperson for the school's first annual Black Business Vendor Fair in celebration of Black History Month. Tamiko mentors rising social workers by being a field instructor for social worker interns. She has done this for 3 years, and many of her interns stay connected after departure by volunteering in various capacities. Tamiko also was recently accepted into the 2022 Child, Adolescent, and Family Behavioral Health Fellowship, which is a year-long commitment. Again, I want to congratulate Ms. Pegee. I'm happy to be able to support her as she makes a difference in the lives of students, staff, and the school communities of Burton Elementary School. So at this time, I'll present Ms. Pegee.
Good evening, DPS board members, Dr. Mabinga, Dr. Hardy, DPS leaders, staff, students, and parents. I am beyond ecstatic to receive the School Social Worker of the Year award for this school year. It is such an honorable recognition that I do not take lightly. I'm delighted to serve such a dynamic school system and community. When I had my interview with James Key and his interview team, they told me that there was no better place to work than Durham Public Schools. Fast forward 4 years later, I would say that they were correct about the district's culture, the amazing students, the school social work team, community, and the gym nestled in the heart of Durham called Burton Elementary School. I would like to give a special thanks to the Director of Student Services, Dr. Al Royster, and the former principal of Burton and now Assistant Superintendent, Dr. Kimberly Farrell. I have the utmost respect for your leadership and support. Thank you, Ms. Tiffany Boss, the current principal, and all of the staff, students, and families at Burton. I thank the DPS School Social Work team for your support and the highly motivated social work interns that I have had working with me at Burton. In addition, it would be remiss not to say that behind every good social worker is a great counselor and data manager. I thank Poncella Brown and Kelly O'Neill for that. Last, thank you to my children who are with me today, family, friends, and the many community partners who support the students at Burton by donating your time, funds, and expertise whenever there's a need. Being a social worker is a very rewarding job, but it can also be a hard mountain to climb. We deal not only with students that need our guidance, but at times there are parents who have skill deficits and hardships. This work is something that takes a team approach. I acknowledge that this award represents a collective effort of many moving parts in a larger system. My heart is full this evening, and I proudly list this recognition as one of my greatest achievements. Thank you.
I would like to, microphones. I would like to present you with your own Spark pin for your leadership and this certificate of appreciation for you. Thank you for everything that you do as a school social worker and for everything that all of our school social workers do. You represent them well. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
A well-oiled machine. Dr. Mabinga, could you go to the left a little bit? Would you please walk the red carpet?
Sure. Do I go this way first?
Right that way. Congratulations again. We have one final celebration, and this is always a little awkward for me because I'm old fashioned enough that the public information and public relations function, sometimes I have to be the spokesperson, but for the most part, we try to be invisible and let the district take center stage. But if we're too invisible, then we don't celebrate the work and accomplishments. And I've got a great team in the Office of Public Affairs who I'd like to come in right now. And one of them's already here, but you can't just take pictures on this one. You have to be part of the team, Tony. The Office of Public, there we go. The Office of Public Affairs is composed of myself as Chief Communications Officer, Sheena Cooper, our Director of Marketing and Community Engagement, Crystal Kimpson Roberts, our Communications Specialist, and Tony Cunningham Jr., our brand new Digital Communications Specialist. I also want to acknowledge former teammates Truett Avery O'Neill and Casey Watson, who have also been part of the Office of Public Affairs during the time in which we received 12 Blue Ribbon Awards from the North Carolina School Public Relations Association. And for more about that, I want to turn it over to Ms. Cooper.
Thank you so much. Good evening, Chair Umstead, board members, Dr. Mabenga, and colleagues. The North Carolina School Public Relations Association presented Durham Public Schools with Blue Ribbon Awards for outstanding and effective communication last month. DPS received 5 gold awards, in the digital media engagement, electronic media, and marketing categories. The entries include the welcome.dpsnc.net digital brochure, the DPS COVID testing program introduction video, return to the classroom video, teacher of the year video, and Ignite Online Academy marketing collateral. Silver awards were also earned for the Countdown to Kindergarten video series, DPS school planning, design, and construction video for Lions Farm Elementary. 3 photos also received a silver recognition for the student lineup at Oak Grove Elementary, a photo of our very own Nurse Howard, and the Bright Future photo, which is the cover of last fall's Spark Insider, which you all received an issue of, and the new issue will be out in just a few weeks. Stay tuned. DPS also received a bronze for the Destination DPS Marketing Toolkit entry. It is an honor and a privilege to work with a team of professionals whose agenda is to effectively communicate internally and externally. The Office of Public Affairs is proud to continue sharing the stories of DPS students, teachers, and staff. Thank you.
I also want to acknowledge the work of our former and current contract COVID-19 communications specialist, Dr. Addison Pate, who supported us as well and was part of the COVID-19 Communications Award. We are honored to serve. It is not our story. It is the story of 32,000 students and 5,000 amazing teachers and staff. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Raven. Madam Chair, that completes our celebrations for the evening.
Thank you all so much for those celebrations. So much amazing work happening in Durham Public Schools. And I have to say our Public Affairs Office does a great job of telling that story. The next item on our agenda is our superintendent's update. But before we do that, Dr. Mabenga, I just want to acknowledge to everyone, one of our board members, Matt Sears, is joining us by Zoom. Mr. Sears, did you want to say hello?
I would like to say hello, yes. And I think I'm on the screen now. Can you all hear me? Can I do a tar?
Heels.
There we go. Okay, my mic is working. I am home. Sorry for the dog noise. I am home not because of basketball, but I have a home positive COVID test. Myself, my wife, and one of our 3 kids. So I know everybody's hotly watching those COVID numbers in those daily emails, and unfortunately, we may see a little uptick from my own crew here. But glad to be with you virtually, and I'll chime in when appropriate.
Thank you, Mr. Sears. Mr. Lee also won't be able to join us this evening. I think it's only his second board meeting that he's missed in his 8 years. He had another commitment. So just want to make sure we let the public know. Dr. Mabinga, I'll pass it to you for the superintendent's update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, members of the board, good evening. We are pretty much at a 2-year anniversary of a night that changed us all forever, when we shifted to remote learning to protect our students and each other from COVID-19. The things we have learned since then about ourselves, each other, and public health have been remarkable. We partner with community organizations to feed our students, learn how to teach and learn remotely, receive vaccine, launch one-to-one digital learning, and carefully reopening our classrooms. I want to honor the sacrifices and challenges of the last 2 years. Like children across our nation, DPS students experience academic and social emotional setback from isolation that we are working hard to overcome. Our teachers and staff were stressed. Few families were left completely untouched by COVID-19. However, I am proud of how DPS and our broader Durham community have handled unthinkable pandemic. We were calm, focused, and we grounded everything we did in an ethic of care. By tomorrow, as a token of the board and administration gratitude, our full-time employees will receive our second SR-funded retention bonus of $1,500 before taxes, and that's prorated for part-time employees and substitute who have worked more than 20 hours a week. I want to thank again our teachers and staff for helping us to get to this point where we are on the verge of reclaiming where Durham Public Schools was before the pandemic, when our enrollment was growing again and our academic progress was significant. I want to make this very clear. DPS has begun to recover from this pandemic. We are on our way back. Our year-round schools are already on spring break, and our traditional calendar schools start spring break on Monday. I encourage all of our families and staff to make the most of this break, but to do so safely. The pandemic is not over, after all. Social distancing, masks in appropriate places, and caution when with unvaccinated and immune-compromised people are still very important. And if you or your loved one are not vaccinated or fully boosted yet, now is certainly the time. Don't wait for another variant. Finally, I would like to make a few announcements. Our annual job fair will be on Sunday, April 9 at Hillside High School. I spoke about the effort to retain staff by recruiting, but recruitment is just as important as this extremely competitive job market. We will be there to welcome our new employees with open arms. Last weekend was a tremendous one for the arts in Durham Public Schools. I attended the opening of the exhibition of arts by our own teachers and staff of Durham Arts Council. Our visual art teachers do so much for our students, but it was great to see them recognize their own talent. It's a beautiful exhibition, and I encourage everyone to see it. On Saturday, we held the DPS Community Fun Fair at the Durham Central Park that included musical performances as well as career technical education demonstrations and informational tables at the DPS Village. It was an open air showcase of the best of Durham Public Schools. I want to thank DPS Foundation and all our staff who made this event possible. I would love to do this again next year. And finally, I would like to thank and to announce that Dr. Jones, Assistant Superintendent for Middle Schools, has just been awarded the Durham Sam, awarded the Sam, Dr. Sam Houston Leadership Award from the North Carolina School Superintendent Association and the North Carolina Alliance School Leadership Development. She's the winner from the cohort 6 of this aspiring superintendent program, right off the heels of our Dr. Julie Spencer winning the same awards last year. I'm proud of Dr. Jones for her leadership of our middle schools and her continued progression as a leader as evidenced by this award. Congratulations, Dr. Jones. Madam Chair, this concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Mabinga. So much great news in there. You mentioned the job fair, and I just want to make sure that was communicated to the public. So Dr. was saying, can you tell us a little bit more about the date and time on that?
Absolutely. It is my pleasure to say that on Saturday, April the 9th, we will have our recruitment fair. And this is a recruitment fair for all positions in Durham Public Schools, not just teachers. So all of our classified as well as our certified positions, we will start at 9 a.m. at the wonderful Hillside High School. And so we will be there, as Dr. Mabinga said, ready to welcome all of our pending new employees for Durham Public Schools. So please, please, please spread the word.
Thank you. So much great news in that update. The next item on our agenda is agenda review and approval.
Move approval of the agenda as presented.
I second.
It's been moved by Ms. Byer, seconded by Ms. Valladares. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please use the same sign. Passes unanimously. Right. The next item on our agenda is our Board of Ed.
We do need to do a roll call for Mr. Smith as he's.
All
Thank you.
right. So we'll do that vote again on the agenda review. I'll start with Mr. Sears,
Aye.
Ms. Byer,
Aye.
Mr. Raven,
Aye.
Ms. Valladares,
Aye.
Ms. Lewis,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye as well, so it passes unanimously. The next item on our agenda is Board of Education monthly meeting minutes for February 24th, 2022.
I move for approval of the minutes from February 24th, 2022.
Second.
Been moved by Ms. Valladares, seconded by Ms. Lewis. Any other discussion? We'll do a roll call. Mr. Sears,
Aye.
Ms. Byer,
Aye.
Mr. Raven,
Aye.
Ms. Valladares,
Aye.
Ms. Lewis,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. The next item on our agenda is general public comment. Announcements to read before we get started. Submitted public comments online will be read out loud during the public comment period, and board members will listen carefully and consider those comments. But we also have some visitors who are here in person. So a quick review of the rules. Please state your name. If you're speaking for an organization, please state your name and the name of the organization. Second, speakers are asked to present their comments in a specified time, and we're going to have 3 minutes tonight. When the yellow light comes on, you'll have 1 minute left to start winding up your remarks. When the red light comes on, you have 1 minute left. When the red light comes on, it will beep, and that indicates that your time is up. Complaints about named staff, students, or parents should not be voiced in open session. However, we are very interested in hearing your concerns with regard to public education, safety of our students, or to the operation of the school system. Finally, board members will listen carefully and consider the comments, but we do not engage in a discussion with our speakers. The first speaker will be David Bromar, and the next speaker will be Ian, I think it's Himberg. I apologize if I mispronounce your name. Mr. Bromar, can you make sure your microphone is on? There's a tap button on there. There you go.
Hello, members of the board, Dr. Mabinga, thanks for having me. My name is David Bomar. I grew up in Durham. I'm from a family of educators and teachers. My wife and I have 3 children currently in Durham Public Schools. one of whom, my daughter, has a rare genetic disorder that currently renders her unable to talk or walk, feed or dress herself. She requires assistance for all her activities of daily living. By all measures, she is of the most vulnerable among us, and her parents of the most discerning of hers and her brother's environment. I'm here tonight requesting on behalf of my family that the board make the wearing of masks in school optional. And the time to remove the mandate is now. Just as the other 99% of school districts in our state have already done. We do not need to wait until after spring break. The indoor mask requirement in the city and county was lifted on March 7th. More than 2 weeks ago, students have already been exposed to the opening of the community. And during the time since, Durham's CDC level has been reduced to low. There's no reason to wait any longer. On March 17th, the governor, along with the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services, announced their plan to adapt to the new stage of the pandemic. Governor Cooper said, but now we enter the next phase, one of individual responsibility, preparedness, and prosperity. And the plan's first stated principle is empowering individuals to make informed decisions for their individual lives and returning to normal routines. Board members, delaying your decision, keeping the mask mandate requirement, keeping Durham last in our state while others are advancing and marching forward. It is not in the best interest of our community, nor is it best for the least vulnerable during this pandemic, our children. Parents have a responsibility to care for their kids to the best of their ability. They should have the right to do so in a manner they feel is best, and ultimately, they will go where they can exercise that right, as we have painfully witnessed over the past year. Managing our kids' health is not a luxury. It's extremely hard work, and it doesn't need to be made more difficult by this board. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Ian, I think it's Hemberg or Hembry. I apologize. I'm a sec.
On, good, all right. Hi, my name is Ian Hembry. I'm a parent of 2 children in DPS system. I'm a former teacher. I have a PhD in educational psychology with an emphasis in statistics. I'm here this evening to ask you to drop all COVID-related restrictions. The interventions being imposed on our children are heavy-handed and fear-based response to the pandemic that does not match the actual science and risk. Or you're using my children for political posturing. Either way, you are not applying logic and critical thinking skills with respect to the education of our children. Given the board's choices, I feel it's necessary to use my former teaching strategies to provide you with 3 lessons. First is about odds and risks. Second is about fractions in child development. Third is about double standards and a real world example of change. First, the risk. The true risk of being hospitalized for a healthy child is at worst comparable to the flu, according to the CDC. Another study puts the odds of going to the hospital given infection at 51 per 100,000, where it is more likely to be born with extra fingers or toes or being born on leap day. The odds of death from an infection, 3 per 1 million, similar to the odds of being struck by lightning. Another way to phrase this is the risk is extremely small. Second, fractions. My youngest is now 6 and my oldest 8. That is 1/3 and 1/4 of their life has now been in an environment of enforced masking and social distancing. These policies have been instituted with minimal efficacy in clinical trials or 0 risk-benefit studies to understand the developmental impact. Yet, we are seeing increases in obesity, anxiety, depression, and suicidal ideation. While not all attributed to COVID, this does necessitate a return to normal. Lastly, double standards. Many adults no longer have to wear masks, and yet as you get older, your risk goes up. The quality studies showing minimal efficacy associated with masking. Moreover, the designs of the study supporting masks would not pass a graduate level course in design. So here's a real world example. I'm wearing a mask. This is how you take it off. Unfortunately,
Excuse me, sir.
due to time
Excuse
allotments,
me, you'll need
I
to
cannot
put-
even touch
excuse
upon the
me, you'll need to-
hypocrisies and inequities these policies
Excuse me,
have
sir,
on
you need to
marginalized
put your mask
groups.
back on.
Every single claim I have
Excuse
has
me.
receipts and can
Excuse
be
me.
supported by research. Children should not bear the burden of protection. That should be the choice of the family. Thank you.
Sir, you have to leave.
No.
Your mask has to be turned on in our building. Thank you. Our next speaker is Sharon David, and I want to remind all of our speakers, the policy is to wear a mask in Durham Public Schools, and that will be required for your speaking.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Sharon Davis. I have 2 children in the DPS school system as well. I'm also here to speak about the masking policy in our schools. Our federal buildings are mask optional, including the White House. The North Carolina state government buildings in this state are all mask optional. Every school system in North Carolina is mask optional except for Durham. Durham city and county buildings are mask optional. This building is not because it's owned by the Durham schools. But all the other buildings in Durham are mask optional. Charter schools in Durham are mask optional. The governor of this state has even encouraged schools to end the mask mandates. So I'm not going to be long. Just to recap, there are no federal mask mandates, there are no state mask mandates, and there are no Durham city or county mask mandates. The transmission level in Durham is low. Please vote today to make mask optional immediately, effective immediately, not to wait until after spring break. The kids need to take their mask off. Not only inside the schools, I know that you have done the mask optional outside of the school building. They can have lunch and whatnot. But the parents that go to the track meets and the baseball games, they still have to wear their masks outside. We're outside watching our children run in a track meet. And I'm about to go red. Please vote mask optional. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Leslie Temple. Leslie Temple is our next speaker.
I'm short. Can you see me? Okay.
We can see you, yes.
Okay, can you hear me all right?
We can, thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about something a little bit different. The school board is failing our children. Durham County receives over $18,000 per child, almost $500,000 per classroom. That's enough to pay teachers a great salary and provide a stellar education for our students. This is in addition to the $46.57 million in ESSER funds for the COVID pandemic. But the sad, dismal truth is this: 62% from your data from the school board, 74% are not proficient in math. 62% are not proficient in reading. But that's not all. Not only are our children failing, but the school board is treating parents and grandparents with disrespect. I'd like to read an excerpt from an email response from a current DPS school board member to a parent grandparent in Durham County. And I quote, "Fortunately for the nearly 32,000 students in DPS, your opinion does not supersede DPS's regulations. Your opinion that DPS requiring masks is wrong and is just that, an opinion. I pray that your children or grandchildren aren't learning that it is okay to not follow rules and regulations because of an opinion. The world does not work that way. Fortunately, as a civilized country, we have laws and regulations. And although based on your Facebook rantings, you don't believe we have legal authority to continue requiring masks when the county and city have stopped theirs is patently false. The county and city have no governing authority over our requirements within school buildings. We as school board members don't have the luxury of putting our head in the sand and ignoring what is going on around us. I would hope that you're teaching your children the importance of following rules, even if we don't agree with them all the time. But based on what I've read of your opinions, that probably isn't the case. When the time is appropriate, the Board of Education will vote on either keeping the mask mandate or taking some other action. Until then, as the school district has noted, all individuals within the buildings are required to wear masks, regardless of your opinion. Thank you and have a wonderful day. Apparently, the board has plenty of time to read other people's Facebook posts. It sure would be nice if they use that time to educate, not indoctrinate. I close with this. Parents, how much longer are you going to tolerate complete disrespect and failure from your school board? I think it is time for a change. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comment. Next, we have Leslie Temple, excuse me, and Naomi Erickson Harris.
Yes, good evening. I'm fogging up. Hi, my name is Naomi Erickson Harris, and I have 4 children, all who attended at one time and do currently attend Durham County Schools, as well as Person County Schools. This board has sworn an oath to uphold the Constitution of the state of North Carolina and the Constitution of the United States of America. You have failed to uphold both of these constitutions. We live in America, and we are free to live our lives without restrictions, abuse, and unlawful mandates from elected government officials. Mandates are not enforceable laws. As an elected public servant, you have no jurisdiction or authority to create or enforce mandates, and yet here we are. There is no emergency, pandemic, health orders, executive orders, school policies, rules, recommendations, regulations, guidelines, directives, or measures that suspend our constitutional rights. You're on the Board of Education. You should already be aware of that, and I'm quite certain that you are. No statute of law has been passed by U.S. Congress that gives an exemption to any institution, facility, corporation, business, or group to allow for me or my children's rights to be violated. No president's order supersedes the Constitution. This board has accepted millions of dollars in ESSER funds and from federal government and the CDC, using our children as pawns. As long as this board complies, meaning making their employees and our children comply with a lie, you get that money. This board is in violation of 22 state, national, and international laws. We, the people, expect all mask mandates, COVID testing, and vaccine coercion to be stopped within 72 hours of receiving the FOIA request, and that was sent out, and made optional, not required, or we are going after your bonds. If you're not bonded, and it is the law that you have to be per Article 72 and 73, then we demand your immediate resignation, as you are not compliant and you are no longer eligible to hold your chair. That said, I will add that all across our nation, parents are standing up for parental rights and against tyrannical school boards and are being called domestic terrorists. The actual definition of a terrorist is a person who uses unlawful violence and/or intimidation, especially against civilians, in the pursuit of political aims. I would say that's a very clear definition of what our school boards have become lately. We parents look forward to your constitutionally valid responses. And Shannon, you have been served.
You can leave all of those at the corner. Yeah, you can leave them right there and we'll make sure they get, excuse me, ma'am, you can leave them right here. You can leave them here and we'll make sure that you get them. We need to have some order in this. I said, we need to have order in this boardroom, ma'am. So it is, your time is ended. It is time for you to head out into the office. Thank you. We received all of those and we'll make sure that board members get that information. All right, the next speaker is Shannon Barney. This handwriting is hard for me to read. And then the last speaker will be Beth Dalton. If we can make sure the speaker gets her folder back, thank you. The next speaker is Shannon Barney. Okay, I'm gonna go into the last speaker being Beth Dalton. Beth Dalton. All right, so I'm gonna move on. Now we have online. We now have online public comment. Mr. Sutterick. I apologize. I'm sorry.
Hi.
Hello. If you can keep your mask on, we can, the mic is really good about
Shannon
amplifying.
Berry is a little flustered right now.
Okay.
I am her cohort and colleague, Miss Summer Sparrow, and I can help speak on her behalf. Where is the folder or content of said folder?
The folder has been moved out into the lobby.
Okay,
Are-
I'll grab those notes and take the points from there.
You said, I'm sorry, can you repeat your
I
request?
can pick up where Miss Berry was about to leave off before the folder was removed.
I see.
Shannon Berry.
The folder was passed back outside.
Let me go grab my apologies. They have her speech.
Okay, you have 30 minutes on the mic. You're welcome to use that time. I am not sure where the folder is. I know that it went back outside, but
But
you're
the folder was empty when it made its way back to Miss
okay.
Berry.
You're welcome to use your 3 minutes for that time. Okay.
Who's got it? I got to keep my mask on. Okay. Yes.
There you go. Thank you so much.
Whew, all right. Appreciate y'all. Thank
And
you.
if you can state your name for the record, and then you go ahead and get started.
My name is Miss Summer Sparrow. The city mask mandate has been lifted as well as the state of emergency. As of March 22nd, Durham County Public Schools was officially marked as the only county left in the entire state to have a mask mandate in place, which means our children can go anywhere in the state mask-free by choice except school. It is time to move forward and give the parents of DPS the option of unmasking our children at school. This is not about the science, as you all have stated many times over and over. This is an absolute and total abuse of power given to a school board that should have never been given in the first place. A school board is in place to make sure that the students are receiving the highest level of education possible. A school board is in place to make sure that educators and staff are being paid fairly for their quality of work. A school board is not there to make medical decisions for our children. Based on the 100+ submitted comments and 400+ Facebook comments on March 10th meetings alone, it was made clear that the board has no desire to listen to the very people that employed them. In the interest of self-preservation, one would think that a democratically elected school board would listen to the parents and teachers that elected them to manage education. Instead, we have a board veering so far off course, following political antics, that they're unable to provide productive education plans and fair pay for staff. You not only have parents, but teachers, bus drivers, medical professionals, and the governor himself saying the exact same thing. Your employer has spoken. It's time to give the medical decision back to the parents, as it should have never been taken away in the first place. My child, my choice.
Thank you. Mr. Sutter, we have probably about 5 minutes if you want to read some online public comments.
All right.
Excuse me, Miss. All right, we'll do those public comments and hold off on the online comments. The online comments have been posted on our website. They also have been sent to all of our board members. If you can state your name at the beginning of your public comment, and then you'll have 3 minutes. When the yellow light comes on, you'll have 1 minute left. The red will be time for it to end. Thank you.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Beth Dalton, and I'm a mother and activated citizen. It is March 24th, 2022, and there is no FDA-approved vaccine available for sale in the USA. The approved vaccine, Comirnaty, is simply not available in the United States. Any vaccine or booster given is under the emergency use authorization only, and it is not the approved FDA vaccine. The industry cannot legally advertise an emergency use authorization drug, but clearly the Durham School Board can advertise for the pharmaceutical companies. How odd. Durham County Public Schools has a motto. Durham County Public Schools embraces, educates, and empowers every student to innovate, serve, and lead. That is a lovely sentiment. Some families even have their own motto or creed. My own family's motto is simple. Integrity is what you do when no one is watching. Ladies and gentlemen, the entire county has been watching you this past year, and now you have the eyes of the whole state on you. They have been watching you through the live feed, and as parents and deeply concerned citizens implored you to consider the risks of prolonged masking. Parents are now concerned with the now understood effects of prolonged oxygen deprivation. The science on the known risks has changed while the toolkit has simply not. Speech therapists are now noting gross delays in speech by an increase of 30%. The cascade of developmental delays has caused the CDC to reset the 24-month milestones to 30-month milestones, quite literally moving the goalpost to reduce the evidence of harm statistically. Parents are aware of the studies that show masking induces a fear response, enlarges the heart, reduces cognitive function, and makes critical thinking difficult. However, none of that has moved you. You have relied on the toolkit to adhere to the CDC guidelines and positive case numbers to mask, isolate, and quarantine children. This toolkit does not negate state, federal, or common law. It does not give you extraneous authority to medically advise thousands of children. Masks are medical devices. Simply put, the adults have used children as shields. We have ignored their innate immune system and their slim risk of death in children from COVID. This information is not on the deep web, y'all. It's simply not. It's available if you look the information up. However, it is not the approved narrative to push this agenda to justify the monies you have received. Your bonuses were given an agreement to smother children from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. each day with zero consideration of the risks that you placed on them, despite the overwhelming medical evidence. You have kept our children in fear to control their behavior. Fear lowers the immune response and keeps you in a fight or flight response. Couple this with the 50 hours a week they are masked in classrooms. The results have yet to be seen. Since lockdown in 2020, 5 million women have left the workforce. Homeschoolers have grown in North Carolina by 62,000 families. Parents have options, and what they've been telling you is they will no longer co-parent with you because we only co-parent with God.
Thank you. We have one more speaker. Is that correct? Thank you. If you can state your name.
Hi, my name is Natalie Spring. I live 3 doors down on Cleveland Street, and my daughter goes to George Watts Elementary School. I was watching the school board meeting on YouTube tonight, as I've done for most of the pandemic, and I heard those first speakers, and they don't represent the people that I know in Durham Public Schools. They don't represent the parents I know in Durham Public Schools. I think the disrespect that they've shown y'all tonight, y'all have had the absolute hardest job for 2 years. You have protected 35,000 students. You have protected 15,000 adults in those classrooms, and you have gotten and kept our COVID numbers low. And that was because of your good decision-making. And I appreciate you. I appreciate you making good decisions, holding our children and what's best for our community in this center. So I was getting ready for bed and I heard all of that nonsense. And I walked over here to tell you that. Thank you. Thank you for having a mask mandate. Thank you for keeping our children safe. Thank you for keeping our teachers safe. I appreciate you, and I appreciate the way you've been making decisions. And I wanted you to have somebody here tonight to tell you thank you. So I appreciate you. That's all.
Thank you. And that concludes our public comments. The next item on our agenda is our consent items. We have a couple items here listed that have been sent to the board in advance, have been reviewed. And so I'll ask the board, what's your pleasure?
Move approval of the consent agenda in full.
Second.
The consent agenda has been, this agenda item has been moved and properly second. Any other discussion? All in favor, we'll do our voice vote. I'm going to start with Mr. Sears. For those in favor,
I vote aye on the consent agenda.
Ms. Byer,
Vote aye.
Mr. Raven,
I vote aye.
Ms. Valladares,
I vote aye.
Ms. Lewis.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. The consent agenda passes unanimously. The next item on our agenda is the Board of Education mask mandate vote. Board, your pleasure.
You know, open this. Just, it's been, a lot of information that's been received between now and the last board meeting that we had and the last vote that we made a month ago. With that, I want to commend our board for listening and following the science, for keeping our students safe. We know that this is a service that we've been called to do, and we will do that with integrity. We are here to maintain safety for our students, and that's what we're going to continue to do. That is my commitment. And as we heard a lot of passionate comments that we don't respond to during public comment, I want to say that I appreciate all the comment that we've gotten via email, even through public comment, and to know that there are many views and opinions on both sides. And we need to make our decision based in the same things we've been basing it on: safety, science, and the metrics. If it's time to move on, it's time to move on, but not because everybody else has done it, but because what does the science tell us? So with that being said, I have been looking at the science. I've been calling and talking with other districts and our school community. Watching the metrics, they are decreasing. And the city and county has made mask mandates optional inside. Our numbers have been going down. Based on the metrics, based on the science, and based on the community input throughout this, over this whole month, I am ready for us to consider what it looks like, as I said before, having masks to be optional, and knowing that we have our teachers, educators vaccinated, students have been vaccinated. Optional means that even as I still go into the schools, I will continue to wear my mask. That's a choice. I think it's for our board to discuss when we think is the right time. I know we talked about after spring break previously. Where I stand now with where we are as a community in the spread, I'll be willing to hear where my other board members stand as well.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. I want to make sure also Mr. Sears has a chance to chime in. Mr. Sears, did you want to go next, or?
Sure, I'm happy to. And I'll state my point first, and then I'll wrap it in with some sentiment regarding, the district that we are charged with leading here. I'm at the same place I was 2 weeks ago, which is to say that the trends are holding. We're now in the low CDC category. I am comfortable shifting to the optional phase when we return from spring break. I think that gives our community time to make the preparations that they want to make. Despite the public comment, we know that we represent all 32,000 students and 5,000 staff. And we have everyone on the spectrum for readiness for this. The thing I do want our community to understand is that this pandemic, if you're paying attention to what's happening in the world, is not over. As we see surges happening in Europe and in Asia. And our board is asking the questions, Ms. Byer, thank you, of our county as to what their recommendations are should we see cases tick back up. We will continue to follow the Strong Schools Toolkit. I will continue to watch the CDC guidance, but I won't hesitate to vote to reinstate masks should our cases begin to increase and professionals' recommendations point to that direction again. So I, to the folks that are there tonight, to the many folks that have written in that feel that this is some grand injustice, I urge you to lower the tone, to consider where this may head, because our fantastic educators are doing the amazing work to educate through this pandemic. And what we don't need is a militant attitude manifesting in our buildings should the decision come down to remask at a later point. Colleagues, that's where I am today. I can support moving to mask optional beginning after spring break. Thanks for giving me this time.
Ms. Lewis had a question for you, Mr. Sears.
Just want to give my sentiments to you and your family as you recover from the positive diagnosis. Wanted to say that also. I just want to get clarity, but you just said after spring break.
Yes, I mean, I should probably use a date. I would be comfortable with us changing to mask optional. I believe Chapel Hill, Scarborough City Schools is the same day, April 4th, Monday, April 4th is the soonest date that I would be comfortable pivoting.
Thank you, Mr. Sears.
And thank you for the kind words.
Thank you, Mr. Sears. Our thoughts are with you. You know, I'm glad that we have approached COVID with care and compassion. I'm glad that we have come together and that we know in Durham that the common enemy is the virus, not each other. And we have heard from some folks who have really strong opinions and are really, really frustrated, and I hear that. We have also heard from a lot of students and teachers and family members that have asked us to keep masks in place through the end of the year because it makes the board the bad guy. The teacher is not having to be the heavy, the principal is not having to be the heavy. It puts that responsibility on us. I'm gonna ask the folks in the hall if you can yell a little quieter, that would be helpful as we work in here. Thank you. I'm concerned about a second surge, a third surge, a fourth surge. I want to make sure that our nurses and staff are ready to implement any changes this board makes. And I would hope that we would move to mask recommended, not optional, so that we're empowering students that are still more comfortable masking and teachers that are more comfortable masking. And we are giving them the care that we want them to feel empowered with going forward. I do think it's important to celebrate the success that we've made, but I think we have to be ready and our staff has to be ready. So whether that's after spring break or 2 weeks after spring break, as we talked about before. You know, I need those that are frustrated to hear we're working towards the same goal of keeping kids in school together. That's always been our goal. So I'd be interested to hear how others are thinking and feeling this evening, but I appreciate our nurses having the time they need as lead time to get ready and have changes in practices and protocols ahead of that. But a move towards mask recommended would be my suggestion when we do make that move.
So I'll start with what I support first, because usually people will listen to what else you have to say after that a little bit more. And my position, for the most part, has not changed since we had the last meeting. At the last meeting, I stated that I would be in support of moving away from the mask mandate. The only question was when. I think the very next day, if not maybe 2 days later, we dropped into the low category. So being able to remove the mask mandate and go to the mask recommended or the mask optional, you know, however you decide to receive that is something we could support. I'll follow up with what Mr. Sears stated, and because I want to make sure that everybody understands really a position that you could take that you don't necessarily have to be against. Spring break is coming up, right? So this is Thursday, tomorrow is Friday, and then the kids are going to be out of school for an entire week. So just because Mr. Sears said that, you know, he could possibly support it after we come back from spring break, that just means that they only have to go to school Friday with the mask, if that's something that passed. So I have no issue with being able to support that. But the other thing that we really also need to think about and be willing to at least listen to each other is you have to listen to everybody. You have to hear everybody's voices. And if there's one thing that I've recognized and I've seen during this 2 years that we've been going through this pandemic is how many people feel unheard. So I'm not sure if as many people now knew what it felt like to be unheard prior to the pandemic, but this is literally a learning experience for everyone. We're adapting to what this new world is going to be like. We've talked and we've had to address so much during these school board meetings. We've dealt with what it means to have a digital inequity, right? A digital divide where, yes, we were able to give our students laptops. That didn't mean that their parents were able to actually support them at home using these laptops, because there was a inequity that was in place when we look at digital, looking at the digital divide. We could talk about the food scarcities and the food deserts that exist around Durham, in which some families have access to food, some didn't. We have great staff, you know, at DPS that does a fantastic job of an accounting for that. But again, this is a situation in which everyone has a strong position. Everyone has to be willing to hear each other and respect each other. And we read all the comments, we read every single email, even if we can't reply to them all, we do hear you, and we don't want people to feel like they are unheard. But we have to also remember, one of our responsibilities is to be able to look out for the public safety of children. Not everybody is always going to be in agreement with that. We understand that. So, you know, if you want to, you know, write us, contact us and let us know that you're dissatisfied with that, I think it's always good to hear from you. I think it's good that, again, we do need to at least be on the same page and understand that, at least me personally, I'm not trying to subject anybody to anything. The goal is the welfare of our students and subsequently the community as a whole, because the reason COVID became what it did was because it was so transmissible, right? So now with a low rating, that means it's less transmissible because it's not out there as much. So I just wanted to say that and just say that I too am, as I said the last meeting, I'm in support of it. So if the rest of the board is in favor of it today, I would gladly support that as well. So thank you.
I want to thank this board for considering that we are in a place of leadership, in a place that is that has to take into account the voices, not just the emails, the calls, the families that tell us what their needs are. This is about always gauging, the needs of our constituents, and it's not an easy thing. It's not an easy place to be in, but we chose a role, and that role is definitely to weigh all the things and to consider who are the most vulnerable in any given moment, who are the voices that are asking us that the stakes for them might be higher than others. The stakes for them might be that they are immunocompromised. The stakes for them might be that their children are in the demographics or the categories that have been most impacted by this pandemic. And so I just want everybody to hear that we have been having conversations. We have been listening. We have been reading all the emails that you send, some of them condescending, some of them reasoning with us, some of them posing questions, some of them giving us the benefit of the doubt. And that's part of the process of the engagement. We get all kinds of messaging every day. But I will tell you that in this state, there are many local education agencies. We are one of many, many local education agencies. There's smaller ones, larger ones. This is a large district. We have more than 30. We have 31,000 plus students. And we have more than 5,000 dedicated professionals who work in our schools, some of whom have very, very unique needs and have talked to us about the impact and have asking us to consider and to weigh and to not be swayed one way or the other by emotions or by the loudest voices in the room or by the emails or by the calls. One way or another, we have to make decisions that are reflective of the needs of a population that is very diverse and that is at different stages. And I hear families that are fed up and just done with the masks. I understand that. I hear, the changing winds in so many ways. But all of what I'm saying right now is that I too would be in support of masks recommended. And I believe we need to give time for our dedicated staff who have been dreading this day. Because not everybody in DPS is vaccinated, and we have heard not everybody will get vaccinated, and that's just the truth. So that leaves us with what protections do we have? What ways are we looking out for our constituents? And so I think, I am in support of all the conversations that we have had that have led us to this point. I'm in support of masks recommended. But I do believe after spring break, minimally would be when I would be willing to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, board members. This district has put safety at the forefront since this pandemic started. We were one of the first districts to say we wanted to close. We quickly pivoted into public health operations, like Dr. Mabinga said at the beginning of his remarks. And we've got access to vaccines early for our educators. We have handled and had vaccine clinics in our schools for our students. And we implemented the Swiss cheese method, right? We upgraded our air filtration. We required masking. We had vaccinations. We did some distancing when we needed to. We had outdoor lunch when we needed to. We have been at the forefront of following the science to make sure our students stay safe and our educators stay safe. You all have talked about the 31,000, 32,000 students and staff members. And it's not lost on me the times that I'm in the community and people say, thank you. Thank you for keeping our students safe. Thank you, Durham. I'm not worried about my kids when I send them to school. I know they need to go, and I know Durham's going to do what they need to do to make sure our students stay safe. And so those people may not have been here tonight or may not always be in our inbox, but I can't tell you the times that I'm out in the community and people are saying, thank you for thinking about safety first. And that's what I'm bringing still to this conversation today. So mask recommended, absolutely, if we're going to move that direction. I think we need to give time for families and staff to get ready for that. So after spring break seems like that option. And if you don't hear anything else I say today, please go get vaccinated. We have approved vaccines for students and for staff members. They will reduce your risk of hospitalization. They will keep you safe in this pandemic. And I really encourage everyone, if you have not gotten your shots yet, please go do so. I have been fully vaccinated and boosted and feel really great about my choice to do that. I will continue to mask in the places that I'm in because I know it'll help keep me safe and it'll help keep those who are most vulnerable around me safe as well. I know that we're all ready to move into a new stage of this pandemic, but COVID keeps changing. There are new variants and wastewater surveillance across the country is ticking up. So we have to be mindful as we continue to navigate this pandemic. We have to continue to revert back if we need to the measures that we know will keep students safe. And so we're going to continue to monitor and watch. I think one other concern I would have is that I want to make sure that we can keep students in-person learning. That's the biggest, I think, important part of we want our kids to be in-person learning. And so as we're considering this option, staff, I would love if y'all could have a little presentation for us about what that might look like if COVID positive cases reported to schools and how we'll manage that to make sure people can stay in person and be in person safely. So those are my comments. I'll accept a motion.
Actually, I'm sorry to still need more discussion about this, but have we talked about pre-K students? Have we talked about school buses and really enclosed environments like that, and whether we need additional input on those settings? I thought that federal law required school buses masked with the, is it masking? I'm not.
There was guidelines from the CDC that mandated masking on transportation, public transportation, but that was lifted. So it's no longer a barrier.
And it's no longer a barrier, but is it a best practice? I'm sorry, do we have anything from our nurses or our staff as feedback on that? Pre-K students, I mean, I'm thinking of some of our vulnerable spots, and Dr. Monk, I'm thinking of all the work you all are doing on ventilation and how that work is ongoing, and how much we know that that is an important part of keeping air quality safe. So I think a report on that in the near future would be helpful. But pre-K students, are their teachers currently going to continue to mask? They're unmasked. I mean, we don't have the nurses and pre-K folks here, so I'm looking to see if anyone can answer any of those specifics.
Ms. Byers, I think at this point, we have all the protocol in place that we've been using to protect all our students. I think tonight, we pretty much just gonna follow the pleasure of the board, whatever direction that you guys are gonna come up with, and that's what my staff will be able to follow.
No, and I appreciate that, Dr. Mbenga. I know you all always do that. I'm trying to make sure that we're thinking of where our most vulnerable students are and where the nurses have told us they've been concerned all through this journey of our most precious vulnerable students. So that's what I was, and that guidance has always been changing, right? We've been watching as the toolkit changes and modifying things. I know a lot of the daycares in our area and the preschools are following our lead as well and keeping indoor masking. So I'm looking about the little ones. Dr. Hardy, you don't have any thoughts that I'm not thinking of, and anything you need to share?
Just as Dr. Mbenga shared, we will, however you all choose to provide direction regarding mask optional, mask recommended, we will provide support and implement in that manner.
And Mr. Raven and Ms. Lewis.
I would just like to ask for everybody to also keep this in mind, that we don't know what it's gonna look like next week, next month, 2 months from now. So I would hope that everybody would understand that if there are significant changes, that we hope that they would, get on the boat with us and join us as we continue, if needed, to implement a mask mandate again, if that situation does occur. I have kids in elementary school, so that's not my goal. I'm probably still going to send my kids to school with masks. One of them definitely wants to wear his mask almost at all times, so that's his choice. But I just want to make sure that people understand that what we're doing deals with public safety and public health as well. And if the data does say it, because the data is telling us right now it's a little safer, we can loosen our restrictions to drop the requirement. But if there's a huge uptick, I hope that we have as many voices advocating for us to reinstate a mask mandate until the levels come back down again. And let's just always be considerate of each other and understand the reasonings that's going into some of the decisions that we're making. So if we do need to bring back the mask mandate, we just hope that everybody would just kind of grin and bear it just for a little while until we could get the levels back down, and then we could go back to the level that we are now. So thank you.
That's pretty much what I was going to say. I hear your concern, Ms. Byer. For our pre-K, those who have not had the opportunity to be vaccinated are most vulnerable and on the school buses. I rest in the fact that we can continue to monitor the metrics, that we can revert back to a mask mandate if that's what is required. And we've seen the resilience in our children over these past 2 years. They're okay, they're making it. And, so if we go back, I'm sure we'll be finding that as well. And again, just know that it is public safety. And as we are looking at people having individual choices, we also have to consider the community and be responsible to the community values as well and support. So I was just going to say what you said. Thank you.
Ms. Valladares.
Just a comment about what Ms. Byer shared about little kids. I was mentioning that we're, one of many local education agencies. I will say that if there's any guidance, Office of Head Start issued, they issued guidance about masking, and a lot of Head Start, we're talking about for the little kids, right? The question is about the itty bitty ones. There are a lot of local education agencies in the area. I know that we're a large district. I know that large districts with older kids, but when it comes to small kids, there's definitely masking that's happening for the protection for those who are most vulnerable, don't have access to vaccines, all the different factors, and especially when you're dealing with vulnerable communities. Any community that's experiencing vulnerability in more than one way. So I just wanted to put that into context, because yes, it is true that districts all around are lifting it, but we also have to look at by age, categorical data. We're not the exception. Thank you.
Make a motion.
Ms. Lewis.
I move that we allow mask recommended beginning April 4th.
I second.
Been moved by Ms. Lewis, seconded by Mr. Raven. Any other discussion? Oh, I would like to say that we have to watch these metrics really carefully. And so the district gets emails every day with the cases, but I would love for our administration also to make sure that we're abreast in board meeting of where metrics are as we're making this decision.
Yeah, and I was just thinking about the metrics and how we've gone down, and we've celebrated a chart that just 2 months ago had enormous case numbers in this community. What we have not seen a lot of is classroom closures. So if, because we have change in this policy on masking and we start to have classroom closures, that will be a metric that I will be monitoring. I will be monitoring if our community gets back to the yellow level on the CDC. Those are things that we're watching and going to be watching very carefully. And our goal, our shared goal, Durham, is to keep students in class together. We know there is work to do, but that's by coming together. And this is a tool that we have, and we've learned so much. Thank you all.
Been moved and properly second. Any other discussion? makes me nervous, y'all. Been wearing masks for so long as a way to keep us protected, and so it just makes a little nervous.
Are we, I did think that county libraries are actually still mask required when we had the speakers coming through. Are we mask optional in this building if we take this vote in these meetings? That's,
Mask
what-
recommended.
yes, right, sorry.
Whatever I think the policy is for our schools will need to be the policy for this building as well.
Great. Just clarifying that for ourselves, and our meeting space is not the size of the city council or the county chambers, so we are in tighter quarters here with our folks. Thank you.
Ms. Lewis, I wondered if you would take an amendment to an April 11th date. That would be after spring break. That would give us a meeting on the 7th to answer any questions that we might have and get started on April 11th.
I was hearing more support around the 4th. I want to stick to that.
I want to hear more what you're thinking, Ms. Umstead, on the 11th.
We, so April 11th would give us a week back from spring break. I think you and I both posed some questions here about what kind of, some questions that we have for the administration. So the 7th would give us some time to hear updates from that. And then the 11th would mean we've been back for a week from spring break. If potentially any cases were to happen or exposures happen, that those should be caught by the time we get back on the 11th.
I like that idea a lot. And I'd heard that there were some spikes in Duke students as they came back from spring break. So that also gives us a little bit of coverage if folks travel and, you know, we see some of that in our community. We're also watching the BA.2 Omicron variant, and that just gives us a little extra wiggle room there, and gives our nurses a little time to help get us ready.
Been moved and seconded. I'll do a voice vote. Mr. Sears?
Sorry, can you clarify what we're voting on? I just wondered if anyone else had any discussion or if we're where we are on the 4th, 11th. It seems really close to coming to consensus.
Mr. Raven?
I understand the reasoning behind looking, I believe, at the 11th. The one reason why I would still support and advocate for the 4th is if we are anticipating things getting that worse over a week, you would actually use the meeting on the 7th to actually reinstate a mandate as opposed to, so because of that reason, it makes sense to continue with the date on the 4th. And if something did, you know, significant changes happen on the 7th, we would then be able to use that meeting to actually review and modify our operations throughout the district.
I agree with that sentiment as well. Keeping at the 4th, as soon as we return, having time over spring break for people to prepare and talk with their kids about it, I think does give plenty of time, and that allows us still to vote once we have our next board meeting if we're seeing changes. And it may not be as immediate either. So I think that because we have our regular board meetings, we can address it accordingly.
I was just wonder if the staff that need to do this work and do this preparation, since we haven't given them a total heads up, will be on spring break, right? So that was the other thinking of interest in Ms. Umstead's amendment, friendly amendment, letting them also enjoy spring break and come back and do the work that needs to be done for this transition.
Ms. Valladares?
I'll be in support, I think, of giving time, preparation time, accommodations. We have worked with accommodations in the past for staff, figured out ways that we need to rearrange classrooms or, you know, provide any kind of accommodations that are needed, especially for staff who are in classrooms where the majority of the students may not be vaccinated. That is a real factor in all of this. And so I'd be in support of April 11th.
I would
I
just
just
like to
have a
remind the
question.
board that there is not an amendment on the table. The motion's not been made, so you're discussing something that's not before the board.
So I would ask again then, Ms. Lewis, whoever made the original motion, would you consider that friendly amendment of amending the date from the 4th to the 11th?
But
Just
so
listening
the motion has already been read by the chair, and so it is not timely for her to make an amendment. If somebody else would like to make a motion to amend, you can do that, but Ms. Lewis is not able to do that at this time.
So I guess at this stage, once the voting begins, if the voting for the 4th date gets enough votes, it'll go forward. If not, then the motion fails, and then someone else could bring it from the floor for the 11th, but I'm going to be supporting the 4th.
Is there any other discussion?
Yeah. Did Matt want to say anything?
Mr. Sears, we'll start with you with the vote. So if you have any additional discussion points, add those in.
I do not have additional discussion points. I can support April 4th, and so I'm voting aye on this motion, but I do understand that if it fails, there's another opportunity for us to vote on something else.
And remind me if it ties, since we're missing a 7th vote tonight.
Board chair is not required to vote, so you can have the other board members vote, and that can be the final vote. The chair is not required to break a tie and is not required to vote.
The chair can vote.
Chair can vote if that's her pleasure.
Yeah, and if the chair does vote.
If the chair does vote, then you can vote again. It does not pass without a majority vote.
Thank you.
All right, so let's go to a vote, unless there's any other discussion. Mr. Sears,
I vote aye.
Ms. Byer,
Vote no.
Mr. Raven,
I vote aye.
Ms. Valladares,
I vote no.
Ms. Lewis,
Aye.
and the chair votes no. We are in a tie.
I do have a question for the administration. Just listen to what Ms. Valladares said about preparation. I know that we've been very safe and in compliance with spacing, with lunch, outdoors, different things of that nature. What other preparation would need to be done to become mass required or mass recommended? Are there other preparations that I'm not considering?
I think the administration would be prepared for what we require. I would ask for my information around how do we keep classrooms open? And so I would like that presentation on the 7th of if we do find a positive case in a classroom, how are we making sure we're going to make sure to keep those classrooms open? And so would want to hear that information from the board. I think I just also have a little concern that we would catch anything by the 7th when we know some of this testing has at least a 24-hour turnaround time. And so that would be just a part of my pause and concern.
I will answer just a few questions, just that question about accommodations. I do know that there's spacing that is always a concern. You know, it has been 6 feet apart, but we know that in many of our classrooms, that's not, all the attempts have been made to keep social distancing in place and masking in place. But I think that there are staff who have asked, you know, whether there's anything that we have in terms of more PPE, you know, should they have more KN95s? We need to be able to equip our staff with options. You know, we talked about clear masks, you know, if we talked about those options, and I don't really know where we stand in terms of providing those clear masking options for staff who choose to use that. So I think in terms of like our inventory of like, are we providing options to our staff, ways that classrooms can be rearranged to make, especially staff who feel that they need that they want some rearrangement of any kind. So I just think that those conversations are going to take a few days in terms of preparations. That's why I'm opting for the 11th.
So I'd make a motion that we move to mask recommended on April 11th, 2022.
A second?
Been moved by Ms. Byer, seconded by Ms. Valladares. Any other discussion?
I do have discussion.
Yes, Mr. Raven.
I know what our goal is, and our goal is to keep people safe. Our goal is to make sure that we're measured in our actions, and to make sure that we give people enough time to adjust. And I understand that fully. The counter argument to that, or another way that we can reconcile our thoughts, is that we're also trying to get goodwill from others as well. We're trying to communicate or do our best to our ability to convey that we are using data. We're looking at the metrics to make these decisions, and not saying that there's a right or a wrong decision in what we're doing. But we do have to acknowledge that we're not telling people to not wear masks. We're saying mask recommended. We can take the mask off on the 4th, and when people come to school, I would venture to say over half of our students are still going to be wearing a mask, if not more. Our educators that are in the classroom, they will still have that same option. Masks do work. And I the whole time we've been going through this for the last 2 years, I've had to believe in that, because I've been in cramped places before. I had a mask on, I felt comfortable. If masks didn't work, we would be having a completely different conversation. But we're saying for a matter of 3 days, coming back on the 4th, we would be able to, again, allow the mask to be recommended for 3 days. Not saying, please don't wear your mask. We're saying, have it be recommended for 3 days. And everybody in the community will already be aware that on that Thursday, we would have a board meeting. We could look at the data again, and we can make any changes or modifications that we need to make. So when we do have the vote, I'm going to vote against the 11th, not because I don't support it. That's not the reason. It's just because I believe that sometimes there's something called analysis paralyzation, or paralysis by analysis, in which you now try to make an analysis and you try so hard to make the perfect decision that you end up not being able to make any decision because you've done a over analysis on things. And I feel like that's where we are right now. I feel like we are right there on the cusp of being able to move it forward. But we just wanted to kind of have another thought, do another analysis session on it, and which isn't a bad thing. But I just, at this time, I felt comfortable with the 4th. So I just wanted to make it clear that I'm not voting because I don't agree. I just think that the 4th is just as good.
Mr. Raven, you made a motion at the beginning of that? Oh, sorry. I apologize. Ms. Byer made that motion. Ms. Valladares seconded. Is there any other discussion? We'll do a voice vote. Mr. Sears?
I vote aye.
Ms. Byer?
Aye.
Mr. Raven?
No.
Ms. Valladares?
Aye.
Ms. Lewis?
No.
And the chair votes aye, so that passes 4-2. Apologies. That we're missing a member tonight. So thank you all for that discussion. I think as a board in the last 2 years, I have been impressed with our ability to have tough conversations around COVID-19, to use science, respect each other's opinions, and figure out what we can do best for our students. So I just want to say, board, I appreciate you all for having this conversation tonight. And we'll continue to follow the metrics. We'll continue to watch this data and be ready to make changes if we need to. The next item on our agenda is the superintendent proposed budget.
Good evening, Madam Chair, board members, Dr. Mabenga. Tonight, we're bringing to you the superintendent's proposed budget for 22-23. And we're excited where we are now. This is our time of the year. Budget season is always fun. It's been made that much more fun with all the changes that came late from the General Assembly. But this is to bring you up to date tonight on where we are and where we think we need to go as we move into the preparation to discuss with the county commissioners and ensuring that we receive the funding that we need to support our budget request. There is one thing we need to talk about tonight that we would need some type of discussion, decision on. And that is the budget hearing with the public. Normally, we do it prior to one of your work session or your board meeting. So if you chose to do it as part of your work session, that would be on the 7th of April to ensure that we hear the voices of the community on where this budget is headed for the 22-23 school year. We have until April 15th. I mean, May 15th, April 15th is usually tax day, May 15th, to get your final decision on what you want to ask the county commissioners for. If there are any changes to our budget thoughts because of changes that the General Assembly may make, but they probably won't come into town until after you've submitted your final budget to the county. So that is one thing we need to decide tonight or over the next week to ensure that we can notify the community of the budget hearing if there is anyone that wants to discuss changes to the superintendent's proposed budget. Tonight, I'm going to turn it over from the beginning to Mr. Modestu, who he and the staff in the finance area have done a fabulous job in bringing this together, calculating all the needs that are in this budget to ensure that we can move forward into the 22-23 school year with the funding that we need from the county. Mr. Modestu?
All right, good evening, board members, Dr. Mabenga, colleagues. So tonight we are going to be presenting the superintendent's proposed budget for the 22-23 fiscal year. If you could jump to the next slide, please, Ms. Smith. So just as a recap again about enrollment, because enrollment really drives our budget from a state, local, and federal level. We're projecting still 31,620 students, both in Durham and across the state. We didn't really see the anticipated rebound in the 21-22 academic year that a lot of researchers were expecting. We're projecting it to remain about 4% below our pre-COVID 2019-20 peak enrollment. We anticipate that, rebounding in the coming years, but still being about 1,000 students below our 2019-20 pre-COVID peak next year. If you could jump to the next slide, please, Ms. Smith. So we are going to have some local savings in the local budget where we have certain thresholds that are met at schools where enrollments may decrease. However, we're going to be receiving a lot less state funding because of that projected enrollment. And there are a lot of areas that we can't simply cut if we don't hit certain thresholds. It's not reasonable to make certain cuts at school. So we're actually having to balance that out Additionally, we're having, this is really all of the school districts across the state are now fully implementing the HB 90 class size requirements. And that's proving to be quite difficult in the sense that you get funding for 18 students in kindergarten, 16 students in first grade, 17 students in second and third grade. But if you get that extra 1 or 2 students in any grade at any school, you don't get any more funding for those teachers to make sure that you maintain no more than 3 above those class size ratios. And we have 8 schools with 300 or fewer students. We have a lot of schools with most of our elementary schools have fewer than 500 students. So there's really these additional costs of making sure that we implement that. And we're seeing that that's becoming more and more, now that we have the full implementation of HB 90, we're starting to see the full cost of that. We also have the reduction in our at-risk funding because the county overall, the percentage of non-economically disadvantaged household families is increasing, but we haven't seen that same decrease in at-risk or increase in more advantaged students in our district as a whole. And so our needs are still the same, but the county's demographics are changing and we're getting less numbers as a result of, it's been 860,000 that could actually increase. They update that with census data each year. So as we're trying to balance this out and kind of equilibrate when we see the HB 90, we're not asking for any decrease in local funding for based on the anticipated enrollment for the 22-23 academic year. You could jump to the next slide, please. So the largest ask in our budget is $4 million for our teacher salary supplement increase. And again, Durham is one of only 5 counties across the state that did not receive the $100 million in additional state supplemental funding, as they called it, for teacher salary supplements that ranges from $400 to $4,000 per teacher, depending on the county's a mix of economic factors that the state had determined. So we're under a lot of pressure, you know, when some of our peer counties, even Orange or Chatham County are getting this funding, and we have to compete with them, and we don't have that. But this proposal would put us on par with Wake and Chapel Hill for most years of experience, and those are the 2 highest paying districts in the state. And we have an updated exhibit we'll show you in a minute with the Wake and the Chapel Hill in Orange County for you to look at. So we also have in our budget the 2.5% anticipated salary increases for our classified and certified staff, as well as rapidly increasing health insurance and retirement increases. We have our operating costs for bringing Lions Farm online in August, which we're very much looking forward to, and additional IT technicians as we look to phase that in. Our ESSER funds, well, all of the positions that we have with ESSER funding are going to expire when those grants run out. And we're trying to phase in support for our one-to-one initiative in the district. We're going to continue to use those grant funds, however, in 22-23 for expanded summer learning, for our instructional support positions at the schools, for our staff recruitment and retention, for our building improvements that are going to mitigate the spread of COVID-19, as well as other COVID-19 mitigation measures. We have our digital learning support that is critical. Without the federal funding, we wouldn't have been able to pivot to a one-to-one district. And we're going to continue to use them for our school level supports, funding that the principal supervisors work with the schools who put in requests so that they can have those tailored strategies that they need to move their school forward. And so we just want to keep that in mind that, you know, in addition to the requests that we have for additional local dollars, we're going to be strategically using those ESSER dollars to move the district forward. Next slide, please. So I guess this is the 3rd time now you've seen this, but the superintendent's proposed budget has a $12.875 million proposed local funding increase. That's $5.3 million for anticipated salary and benefit cost increases, $4 million for our teacher salary supplements, our operating costs for Lions Farm and IT workstation technicians for a total of $10.3 million for Durham Public Schools, as well as the corresponding $5.78 million in charter school pass-through. That brings us to the $12.875 million. Next slide, please. So that would put our total county appropriation at $172,573,487 for our operating funds. For this year, we've been able to continue to operate within our pre-K programs within those allotted funds that they've given us, the $1.5 million in special grant funding, and then $508 $508,140 in our Article 46 sales tax. So we have no increase in that area. And we're very fortunate to get that requested increase from 3.37 to $6 million in our annual capital outlays this past fiscal year. And we're keeping that in there, no proposed increase in our annual capital outlays, which puts us at just about $1 per square foot. With Lions Farm coming online, will be just over 6 million square feet of building space in Durham Public Schools. Next slide, please. So this chart has a couple things going on. If you look in the blue colors, I don't have a laser pointer, but the blue colors, you'll see where we were in 2016-17 in the lightest blue. Sort of the Carolina blue is where we currently are with our teacher salary supplement starting at $5,675. And the darker, we'll call it the Duke blue, starts at $6,500. And this is the proposed teacher salary supplement for the 22-23 academic year. So under this proposal, it would have almost all teachers would be getting about $1,100 more next year than they received this year in their local salary supplement. And that would put us above for most years of experience where Wake and Chapel Hill, Carrboro City Schools are currently. And this is a moving target. We always, all districts are trying to compete right now for a national shortage in not just in teachers, I mean, acutely in teachers, but we have a national labor shortage. And so we're really just trying to put ourselves right up there with the highest paying districts. If you could jump to the next slide, please. So this just breaks out the entire budget, the $678 million that's going to Durham Public Schools in the superintendent's proposed budget for 22-23. What we did this time is we broke out federal funding. Normally, we just have that as one category. We split out the federal funding that's recurring from the one-time federal COVID relief funding. So we anticipate carrying over about $112 million in federal COVID relief funds. But we're going to continue to have those as special non-recurring funds. If you look at our recurring funds, we get about 55% of our funding from the state, about 36% from the county, and about 9% from the federal government. Those federal funds, the recurring ones, are primarily our funding for children with unique needs, IDEA funding, and our Title I and other funding for schools that serve families primarily from low-income households. But that's only about 9% of our regular operating funds.
Can I ask a quick question on this one?
Yeah, sure.
I'm looking at the federal COVID relief, that $112 million in revenue. So is that the ESSER 2 and the ESSER 3 funds collectively?
Correct. And
Okay.
so, and it's also worth noting that the ESSER 3 funds that are on our budget for 22-23, they don't expire until September of 2024. So we'll be carrying, we won't be spending that entire $112 million in the 22-23 academic year, but from the nature of the grants, we have to reflect them on our books.
Perfect. Thank you.
Next slide, please. And just showing an overview of how our funding, how our budget is broken out by our categories, with 60% for our school-based instructional support services, just under 20% in capital investments, just under 10% in operational support. It's worth noting too, there's just so many aspects that go into running a school district. People might say like, well, how do you even have the lights on? How do you make sure all the trash gets out? That our local funding, in addition for the buildings and the capital, our local funding just makes sure literally that we have all of our utilities, that we have all of the operations, our maintenance, our custodial services. So, each one of these is critical in its own right. With the one-to-one, we are breaking that out separately now with information technology and just the capital cost of getting those devices and that support. So that's something that just with that nature that we're kind of looking at separately. Next slide, please. And so we have it broken out of how we're spending our funds by personnel versus non-personnel. If you exclude capital, which is really kind of its own separate enterprise, about 83% of our budget is on salary and benefits for personnel. So when we're talking about our budget, we're really talking about the people that make the school district operations possible. one piece I'll say there just as well, we may have a slide at the bottom, but the salary and benefit costs, for finance people over the next decade, that's just something that's going to continue to be a challenge for how do we operate when we have 5 to 6% increases on an annualized basis in our retirement and health insurance costs per year. How do counties sustain that? At a time when we're under a lot of fiscal pressure. So that's just something that from a finance side, we don't really see clear skies or smooth sailing on that front. Next slide, please. So this just breaks out our personnel, our 5,272 full-time personnel that are included in the 22-23 budget. Just under half of those are regular classroom teachers. Just under a quarter are instructional support personnel, and that's everything from our instructional assistants, our coaches, our librarians, our professional school counselors, social workers, psychologists, school-based specialists. It's daunting often to think about everything that goes into supporting our schools, and just how important each one of these, like we had in our celebrations today, that just how important each one of these categories is in making sure that students achieve their full potential. Operational support personnel is about 15% of our employees: bus drivers, custodians, cafeteria workers, skilled trades, and then our latter categories, but just spelling all of that out. Next slide, please. And as Mr. Lasser pointed out, we're presenting, I think I actually had an error here. I had a bullet point in March and in April. We're presenting our budget in March. We've shared with our principals their planning allotments for the 22-23 academic year. And then in April, we're requesting perhaps on the April 7th work session to have a public hearing. And then on the 7th or on the, I believe it's the 21st, we can have a vote on the superintendent's proposed budget. We'll also be having our allotment meetings with principals in April. And then on May 9th, the Durham County manager will be presenting her budget. There'll be work sessions from the 17th of May through the 8th of June, a public hearing for the county's budget on May 23rd, and then adoption of their budget on June 13th. We don't anticipate there being a state budget. It would be fantastic if there was a state budget by June 30th, but if not, we'll pass a continuing resolution as we wait for finalization of the second year of the state's biennium budget for 22-23. So with that, we'll open up for discussion and questions. This is for information only tonight, but we are asking to schedule the budget hearing for April.
Thank you, Mr. Modestu, for that presentation. Board members, is there any discussion? Mr. Raven.
As always, thank you for presenting this in such a clear and concise manner. I have two questions that kind of stand out to me. One is just, I don't think we emphasize this enough. On slide 10, they had the budget summary by object. When I saw this breakdown, you had the salaries and the benefits, and it showed that the percentage of non-capital budget for salaries and benefits comes to about 82.7%. So what you're saying, so what this chart is saying is that if we look at all of our operational expenses, right, salary and benefits account for 82%, basically 5/6 of our entire budget is just salary and benefits. So hopefully that resonates with people that are watching this at home, because that means a lot of times people always emphasize that the schools have so much money. You all could do so much. Really, the operational budget is limited if you compare that to the actual capital, and the capital is debt funded, right? So we don't have the ability to just move debt funds to pay for people's salaries and benefits. That's usually just for that one-time cost. So thank you for breaking that out and putting that into perspective, because it definitely helps everybody understand this. The real question that I have is on page 11. On page 11, where it talks about the DPS Personnel Summary, If you look at the bottom and it has before and after school care program, it has a total of 81 programs. I know with us changing the spell schedule in a new school year, there have been a lot of parents that have asked about how we're going to ensure that we're going to be able to have after school available for their families. So this is one area that I'm assuming that we're going to be able to increase significantly in order to account for that increased need in the future. But thank you.
Yeah, just a very brief comment on that. Our office is working with Dr. Harding, Dr. Danner, and Tracy Super on plans for that. I believe there'll be something in the April board meeting or work session for some more concrete details, but that is actively being worked on.
To your point, Board Member Reverend, when you're looking at a breakdown for salary and benefits across the states, pretty much between 80 to 90%. So we are not the only district.
Ms. Byer?
No, I was just going to say thank you.
That's fantastic, because I was going to start with thank you, so it kind of goes together there. We have the best budget staff and the most transparent budget in the state, and I appreciate the graphic ways that you lay it out so that we can see where folks' money is and how we're being accountable for that to the public. I appreciate the slide that showed the teacher salary increases, and I think that is this board's first priority to make sure that we lead the state in salary local supplements. But I also note that you're basing it on what surrounding districts are doing this year, and I imagine they are also looking at upping theirs as well. So have you all heard any chatter from them, or are we going to do this and then need to do it? It's a multi-year kind of thing. How are y'all thinking about that? Because this labor market certainly has shifted.
We haven't, well, with Wake County, we haven't seen much movement for them in some time. And with Chapel Hill, they had just sort of changed theirs this year. Previously, they had grandfathered only certain people with long experience who weren't involved in project search would be getting the higher pay at the higher levels of experience. So we know that Chapel Hill just made a change, and the Wake County has been quite steady for a number of years. But I'll leave it to Mr. LaFleur to.
And it could be very well that Chapel Hill will be looking at moving theirs again. They have the local city tax that they have a lot of flexibility with that provides them those extra resources. And that's just, this is a cat and mouse game on an annual basis. You know that next year, if they do move their supplements up, that we'll be coming back to you to continue to move that. I don't know if they change it significantly, if they don't have that much turnover. So therefore, we wouldn't be losing a lot of teachers to them. So it's really about right now, I think, about Wake County and trying to make sure that we continue to be above them. And it's always going to be a cat and mouse game.
You all have any thoughts from the Leandro judge change this week and what finance officers across the state are thinking? Or is it just too soon? Should we have an answer within the month? Do you?
Be great to have an answer. They meet Monday. I think that is when they'll be taking up the bill. From that standpoint, our discussions have been trying to catch up this year. And knowing that we're going to be saddled with hopefully a budget sometime in early summer rather than November again. But we really haven't discussed the change in that and where they're heading with the court case. I mean, really, until they make a ruling, we would love for the additional funding to come, but I think that battle is still a political battle that we're just waiting to hear finalization on.
Yeah. You also talk about how many community school coordinators are in this budget, and I heard the possibility that some of our principals are really excited about additional community schools within Durham, and what would it take to fund each of those positions if the board decided to add more of those in the future?
I've been working with Mr. Kesson on this particular item. I told him we're gonna revisit this conversation around June, depending on what funding we'll be receiving from the county. So it's been really positive conversation. Even some other departments that we have, they have new ask as well that we did not include. So we're also looking at our existing budget to see how we can move things around. But I told Mr. Kesson we'll be talking around June.
But what does the community school coordinator cost, just so we know ballpark?
We're probably close to, with salary and benefits, I think it's close to $76,000 to $80,000, just depending on the years of experience.
Thank you. And you know that I remain very interested, and I'm not quiet about it. I'm just trying to convince others that our classified staff can't wait and stay down near 15 and a half, wherever we have them. I'm looking forward to us being aspirational. Our budget is an aspirational document for this board, and we take it across the street and we negotiate and make a strong case with our commissioners. And I would love if we could get our folks to 16, to 17, make a multi-year plan to actually be ahead of where this labor market is. So I would be interested in that as we move forward, but I've said that before and I'll continue saying it. Thank you all for the work on this budget.
Madam Chair, I do have a brief update on Leandro, if that would be helpful in response. There was a status conference today that was held. The new judge appeared measured, and this was one of my colleagues at Harrington Smith that attended it. I did not attend the conference. What he shared with us was that it appeared that he expressed that his role on the remand was very narrow, and he would be looking at just the issue of whether or not what the impact was on the state budget of the particular pretrial court's order. And he wouldn't be broadening that to anything wider at this time. So that was our initial impression today.
So that's kind of a negative report, I would say. Not an optimistic, we see you, we hear you, we have $6 billion of state funds, and we're going to take care of school children that have been left behind for 30 years. I see it as a more negative view, your report.
I would say that we are guardedly, I wouldn't say our reaction to that was necessarily negative. He was only addressing the remand order, and what he was saying, I think, was, I'm not going to try to look at broader issues such as whether there's anything else that may impact whether or not these funds are realistic. He's going to look at it very narrowly and what the court remanded it down to, which was just the issue of what was the impact of the trial court's order on the state budget. That was our initial reaction to that.
Okay, well, that's helpful. More optimism than my cynicism. Students have been waiting.
Guarded optimism.
Guarded optimism, love it. Any optimism is good. Thank you.
Any other comments on the budget? Ms. Valladares?
Yeah, just thank you for providing the details. I mean, even just looking at the positions that we're funding locally, 1,226 positions that we're funding through our local monies, from teachers to operations support staff and also instructional support personnel, which includes instructional assistants. I'm just definitely grateful for the meetings that we have with the county commissioners and wanting to just highlight the importance of having these roles, instructional support. We talk about the understaffing that we have. We talk about the needs of students, especially as we know, all the roles that they support our EC department. I definitely do want us to prioritize just having more funding and ensuring that we're very mindful of the classified staff, instructional assistants. And I think also just want to talk to the instructional assistants who are listening to us and all your advocacy and your letters and the real ways that you engage us and tell us about the impact, that we are not forgetting that we definitely want to keep this into account. So I just wanted to ask you all, Paul, this time it wasn't included, but last time you were talking about the ways that we have had a decrease in the funding for instructional assistants, and that number, we were once given, I think we've lost over time, we've lost a couple of positions. Do you remember how many positions we've lost over the years?
I'm hoping this one, Dusty, can pull up one of the previous presentations where we had that listed, but I can tell you that it used to be approximately one instructional assistant per 28 students. They have increased that to basically 1 to 34. They do it by classroom, so it's really hard to gauge what that real number is, but it's in the average of 1 to 34 now. It's probably close to 4 to.
Yeah, so it used to be 1 to 30.
One-
And now,
Come over to the mic, Mr. Modestu, sorry.
sorry, yeah, it used to be 1 to 30. You get one IA, state-funded instructional assistant per 30 students. Now it's 1 per 42 students.
Just in view of the ways that we have, that ratio has changed, and it's changed in ways that is not, that are not supportive of the students that we serve, especially the needs of this particular district. I would just want to see any ways that we can provide more support, provide more funding for instructional assistants. I know that it says on here that it's 17.1% of all locally funded. It makes 17%. I'd like to see that percentage go up. And that's just, my,
So one of the things that we have spoken to the DPI about is that with the smaller class sizes creates the bigger gap. That's why it's up to the 1 to 42. And trying to get that down. But without the General Assembly support, and many moons ago when I was at DPI, there were members of the General Assembly that didn't think that IAs were important, that it was more important to put a teacher in front of the students. So what we've seen over the years is we have over $17 million that the state has taken away based on the 08-09 crisis that we all dealt with. Those levels didn't come back in any of the instructional support areas, nor is this General Assembly looking to put those back. They blame the prior administration didn't put them back. Well, that was during the crisis, the financial crisis that we had back then. With the increase in funding and revenues that have gone on in this state, that is one of the biggest pushes that I speak to when I speak to finance officers is we're not even back to the 08-09 level. They will say that they put all these dollars into the budget but it's for teacher salary increases and benefit increases primarily, right? So they've been focusing on those things and principles, but they're not focusing on the whole. And that's the biggest problem I have, and I keep speaking to. Again, I speak to, you have a $6 billion revenue surplus. Please give us our $750 million statewide for technology needs. So I just want to go, as I always do, on record with those pushes.
Thank you, Paul. Well, and Paul, I'd never heard anyone articulate, we used to have instructional assistants grades K through 3 in North Carolina, and it wasn't that long ago. But that connection to the class size, no wonder our IAs are feeling pressed. We're shrinking class sizes. We got those positions cut, and they are running between multiple first and second grade classrooms trying to cover for those smaller class sizes, right?
Correct.
Ratio hurts, yeah.
Ms. Lewis?
Thank you so much for this presentation. You all do such an amazing job. Mr. Modesto, thank you so much for this presentation. It's always very clear. The graphs are really good, and I appreciate I was looking for the highlights of the budget. And the main thing that I'm seeing is going to slide 6, the comparison chart. And what I think I heard you say, Mr. Lesueur, other counties may do increases, and you're keeping an eye on that as well, so that we can remain competitive. In talking about the classified staff and the supports there, I know that our administration has made a recommendation to do a comprehensive salary study, and several of the board members have been in support of that comprehensive study. And there are needs here and now. I think that it is good that we do take a holistic approach across the board so that we're not undercutting anyone, and that we do look at all the positions that are there. I am wondering if ESSER funds could be used for classified staff, considering equity in the way that we've done this for looking at the local support where state has not supported us, but we're looking at local support for teacher supplements. Could we use ESSER funds for supporting our classified staff only?
I would say no to that because they're looking for the utilization of those funds to push us forward in learning loss, in ensuring our buildings are safe and healthy places to go to school. I don't know of any school districts that are using the ESSER funds. We can look into it. But I don't think that that's really the use of those dollars. One of the things ESSER funds can be used for, and we did place positions in the schools, whether it be for mental health support or teachers for some of the needy areas. That's what the federal government's really looking for, not to supplement salaries on an ongoing basis, because that puts us in a bad position, not knowing if we're going to get the money from the county when we do come up with the request. And things are nice and rosy right now, but we don't know the future.
Yeah. I know we couldn't do it for salary ongoing, but one-time funding that could be supportive as a means of equity. I also wonder about our unmet needs. I remember seeing a presentation or slide before about what's not being met. When will we be able to see some of those things? I think we talked about department needs and having to see where we land. Does that come after this budget, or is there a place where we look at what has been left remaining?
Well, we have provided you that information through other presentations. This is what we came up with to propose for the moving forward with the superintendent's proposal.
So it was probably the last one
Yeah.
that we had. It might have been there. Okay, I'll go back and look at that. Thank you.
Ms. Lewis, you took the words out of my mouth around ESSER funding. I was going to ask a question around, could we use ESSER ARPA funding to do something for our classified staff members, and really thinking about that equity piece at the forefront. So thank you for bringing that up. But that was going to be my question around the budget. I had one more question. I think, Alex, you mentioned about a 5% increase in benefits that we're responsible for every year. And if I'm correct, that most of that is supported by our local dollars. Is that like local county dollars? Is the 5% increases in the retirement and benefits that we're responsible for?
So from the state level, with the dollars we receive from the state, they will add those in. It won't be a one-for-one. For every position we have, they will just add additional dollars to our pots of money. They will guarantee position allotments, which are your teachers, guidance counselors, administrative staff at the schools, as well as CTE. But those dollar allotments will go out under the formulas, and those formulas are not 100% guaranteed those dollars. So therefore, that puts an extra pressure on locals because now your salaries have gone up. You don't get the money for your benefits enough for the benefits, and it becomes another add to the local costs. So that 5% that we budget for are for our local position. And as we move forward and they pass the budget, we have to react to that change as well.
That's an important thing for folks to consider who are at home. And Mr. Raven, I love how you alluded to so much, most of our budget is spent on salaries and benefits. And some of that we're going to have every year. I say just the cost of doing business goes up for our public school system. And we really do need the state to fund us at the levels that we need to fully fund Leandro, because our students are the ones who are harmed when that doesn't happen. So I just want to appreciate you all for this presentation. I know you proposed having the budget hearing on April 7th before our work session. So would that be a 5 p.m. start, or would you want to start earlier? Looking to staff.
So usually you start at 5, you have your hearing, and it goes as long as it goes, and then you move on to your work session.
Right. So we have a proposal to have the work session, the public hearing on April 7th, starting at 5. And then we would start our general meeting after at 6 or right after that, 6:30.
So that would be moving our 5 o'clock work session to whenever.
We could move it to start at 6. If we needed to start later due to more people at the public hearing, we could do that.
Yeah, that's fine, just as long as we notice it the way that it needs to be noticed to make that change.
Mhm.
That's fine.
I would propose a 5 and then 6 p.m. Do we need a motion to approve that change at that public hearing?
Have you already approved the schedule?
Mhm.
Yes.
I think we're fine.
All right. All right, if there's no other discussion, thank you all. The next item on our agenda, partnership with Durham County and the City of Durham and Duke Energy's Green Source Advantage Program.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening to you and the board members and Dr. Mabanga. I'm joined here tonight with Mr. Fred Davis and Mr. Dan Snitzer, and they're gonna provide you with a presentation about the partnership with Durham County and City for the Duke Green Source Energy Program. Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Dr. Monk. Good evening, Dr. Mabinga, board members, Madam Chair. We'll be with you really briefly just to give you an update on the great work we're doing here in Building Services and DPS. I have with me today Mr. Dan Snitzer, who is our newly appointed Director of Construction Sustainability. He'll give you the meat of this presentation, but quickly want to just give you an overview. We've been working based on what you've communicated to us on renewable alternative energy sources. A great program was brought to our attention concerning a public-private partnership, which we've heard from joint meetings with the county board members and Board of Education. And so this is a great opportunity. We're still in the incubator stage, but we just wanted to provide you a little update of how we hear you and are working to meet our goals. Dan?
Thank you so much, Mr. Davis. Good evening, everyone. We can move to the first slide and fill it in, please. So back in November, the board passed our energy efficiency and renewable energy resolution with an explicit goal to reduce our non-renewable based energy use intensity by 80% by 2035. Now, I'll admit it's a bit of a convoluted sentence and a bit of a convoluted goal, but it actually hits the nail on the head of what we're trying to do. What it enables us to do with this goal is focus on reducing our energy use currently and increasing our renewable energy, both of which are key factors to getting towards a healthier, more sustainable, and more financially stable energy portfolio. We've been presented with this potential opportunity with two great partners, the county and the City of Durham. on an interesting program called the Green Source Advantage, which is offered through Duke Energy. It effectively works as a power purchase agreement, which is generally not something that is doable in North Carolina, but this program makes it possible through Duke Energy. The effective way that it works is a developer can build a solar farm, and what they call partners, which would be in this case possibly us, the county and the city, are purchasers of that or funders of that development. In a traditional power purchase agreement, we would be able to buy that energy, that power directly from them. The way the Green Source Advantage program works is the developer actually sells the energy to Duke Energy. And in doing so, it offsets what Duke Energy has to send up into the grid because it's being offset by clean renewable energy. Duke Energy then credits the purchasers, the partners, ourselves, the county, and the city for that energy that is created. They also charge us a premium, a fee, to be able to produce that energy. Those two numbers are regulated separately. So the utility commission actually sets what those fees can be. And so at some point in the future, as energy costs continue to rise, it is very possible that the credit will exceed the premium that is being paid. That is not the current expectation, at least in the first 5 years of the program, which is really the only amount of time that they can have some level of accuracy in what they're estimating. But it's definitely not out of the realm of possibility that the credit will exceed the premium at some point in the future. What the partners, the city, county, and Durham Public Schools get out of this is the renewable energy credits and the ability to say we have offset our energy use by a certain amount. In our case, if we are able to procure about 4.4 megawatts of this 35 megawatt system, which to give you a sense of scale would take up about 250 acres, then we would be offsetting about 15% of our energy use, which is a huge first step into going into reaching our goal. And this will all run parallel with the amazing energy work we're doing with our energy manager to reduce our energy portfolio. And hopefully you've seen what we were able to save over winter break. And we've been prepping hard for spring break for big shutdowns. And with some on-site solar opportunities that we are working on right now as well. So it's really creating a nice blend of our portfolio to make sure we're maximizing all of our opportunities. Next slide, please. So the overview again would be the entire program would be about a 35 megawatt system. DPS would have responsibility for about 4.4 of those megawatts, which would estimate or create about 9 million kilowatt hours, which again is about 15% of our use. If you're keeping score at home, we currently use about 60 million kilowatt hours a year. And because we will be partnering with the county, who are the funders of our operational budget, and at least in those first 5 years, there would be a potential increase, or there would be an increase in those costs as Duke Energy passes on the premium as well as the credit, and we pay the net. What we're working with the county on right now is an interlocal agreement to ensure that they will fund our portion of it through their funding of Durham Public Schools. So though our energy bills would be slightly higher in net if compared year to year, the funding of our utilities would also increase proportionally to make sure that that's met. And those are the details we're working out now. There are a lot of huge advantages of doing this. One is that all these costs are operationalized and not capitalized. So we're able to continue to maintain our capital funds for on-site improvements that directly affect the quality and experience for our teachers and students. And being off-site, we don't have to worry about any of the associated capital improvements and maintenance that go with putting solar on rooftops, parking lots, open fields, et cetera. So it really is a great mix. It's not the only direction we want to pursue, but it's definitely a good opportunity. And we wanted to present it here tonight because it is a little different. It is a bit of a different model, and we wanted to lay out this element of our portfolio as we pursue our other avenues as well.
Thank you all for this presentation. It's been exciting to see as we pass the resolution. Mr. Schnitzer, you started all the different ways that we're moving towards being a more sustainable district. So I appreciate your efforts, both of you all and the team. Board members, any questions, discussion? I'll start with Ms. Byer, Mr. Raven.
Just big kudos to you all jumping on this and really partnering with the city and the county. This is exciting. This is exciting for our children and their future. Can you explain to me, though, the allocation? Because when we know we have 6 million in square footage and our square footage is huge, why, if there's a 35 megawatt between the three entities, are we only allocated 4.4 megawatt? That seems not proportionate to our square footage and our presence in the triumvirate partnership.
Yeah,
Am I
so-
missing something there?
You're not proportionally, but from a process perspective, these are a process that the county and the city have been working on for a while. To procure this, they went through an RFQ process to find the right vendors and all the necessary regulatory steps. And so we are able to add on with them as part of that process. The other piece of it is that their proportional expense also goes up 3-4 times that ours would. And so that's a commitment that on their side, they're able to make for their own facilities, and then again, support our facilities at that 4.4%.
So in the future, though, as this program grows and as the investment grows, we could look at changing those allocations with their help and their financial support.
Not on this specific project. It's a finite space with finite number of solar panels and megawatt hours in production. We could look at doing another relationship on a different site with them or with others to increase our participation.
I'll celebrate what we have and then trust y'all as you lead us forward. But thank you for explaining that. That's a new model that is exciting for the community. Thank you.
I'm always appreciative of when you all bring us information related to sustainability and energy usage. When I'm looking at some of this, well, I did have a question because I think you mentioned it earlier, but like roughly, what's the percentage of the energy used at our facilities that are, I guess, based off electricity?
Off electricity as opposed to gas, I don't have that proportion off the top of my head, but it's got to be.
Is it the majority?
Oh, yeah, it's in the
Okay,
70 to
okay.
80%.
Okay, that's okay.
Absolutely.
That's what I was thinking. That's a huge dent. I'm just looking at the total energy
yeah.
usage that over time we could expect to put a dent in it. And I know it's probably extremely expensive to one day maybe even be able to switch some of those other facilities from gas to electricity. But I was just wondering what this would be able to do.
And while we don't have those exact numbers today, we do, as Dan mentioned, do have a dashboard that, apologies, we did not include the link in the presentation, but we definitely can forward that to Dr. Mabinga to share, where you can see those actual numbers and actually look at the energy usage by site, by region, and down to the granular level of the school.
Thank you. My other question is just looking into the future, would we be precluded from being able to use any of the energy that's coming through our solar panels and things like that to actually be able to use them to charge our electric buses, which I'm sure we'll have within the next decade? Like, this doesn't block us from being able to redirect some of this energy saved, right? How does that work?
So from these panels specifically, we will not have access directly to that energy. However, part of our master plan that we're working on right now is working with the transportation department, looking at our fleet electrification infrastructure necessary to do that, and then tying that in with some of the alternative energy projects that we are doing. So there's two ways to think about it. There's the direct relationship between having a solar canopy that can directly charge into a bus or a car. But if we think about it on a larger scale, it all goes up into the grid. And so even if we are charging at our transportation center with electricity from Duke Energy, if we are offsetting it with panels at a school somewhere else, the net of what actually is taken from the grid, and therefore the production and associated pollution and dollars that associated with it, still net out to about the same. So the electrons don't have to go directly from the solar panel into what you're charging to get all the benefits from it.
Gotcha. That makes sense. And my last question, you kind of answered it, because I was also thinking about us once if our goal is truly to be able to get completely off the grid to reduce our carbon footprint, theoretically, we're going to have to be able to have some place to actually store this energy in the future. And you've just answered a question that we won't be able to have access to any of this energy that is being redirected. But I guess in our long-term plan, it is going to be to eventually be able to have batteries that can actually house this power on site, so that we don't have to rely on electricity directly from our provider, or we'll actually be able to use our own. So
Absolutely. As we do more in-depth assessments, storage capacity is definitely one of those areas as we increase our production, and also to look at it from the perspective of resiliency, that if we have a power outage or a grid outage, to have access to some power on site, which traditionally we've done through a diesel generator, we could store power and use it at that point.
thank you all again.
Ms. Valladares.
I want to thank you for your work. This is definitely something to celebrate. And also a wonderful thing that the county is supporting us. City and county have, they pass resolutions, we pass a resolution as well. We're all on the same page. And I hope that this is indicative of more partnerships along the lines of considering our installations, our buildings, in all whatever plans they have towards the resolution that we have to have 80% renewable energy by 2030 and 2035 and 2050, to go towards these endeavors. And so I know this is a start. This is something great. This is something to celebrate. I just want us to continue to leverage whatever the city and county are doing, so that we can also benefit. At the end of the day, this is not something that we can hold on our own, as is evident based on our need for bonds, our need for more funding and capital expenses. And so I'm just very, very pleased with our ability to jump on this, our ability to leverage what's happening, and my hope that we continue along this path. So thank you all so much for working so hard towards these goals.
Ms. Lewis, thank you all for the presentation and the work that you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a, we need a
Oh, I
motion.
apologize. You all want to leave without your motion too?
I would move approval of the Green Source Advantage Program partnership with Durham County and the City of Durham. I second.
It's been moved by Ms. Byer, seconded by Ms. Valladares. Any other discussion? Mr. Sears, I believe, has dropped off our Zoom, so we'll just do our typical vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please use the same sign. Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is accreditation update. Dr. Hardy.
Thank you so much, Chair Umstead, board members, and Dr. Mavinga. If you could please pull up our presentation. Good evening. Tonight, we will provide an update for our board and our community on our 5-year accreditation review. I would also like to introduce and recognize Ms. Ashley Stevens, Director of School Innovation, who is leading and coordinating our accreditation event. Next slide, please. Tonight, we will give an overview of our accreditation engagement review, look at recommendations from our previous accreditation review, and reflect on our journey of improvement over the past 5 years. Next slide, please. Above, you will see a quote directly from the Cognia website. For some institutions, the accreditation process is conducted school by school or individually. Durham Public Schools has moved to a system accreditation process. Accreditation at the system level will certify all 54 of our schools. At this level, this shows the district that we have the ability to effectively drive improved student performance and continuous improvement for our school system. Next slide, please. The previous accreditation vendor was Advanced Ed, and they have transitioned to Cognia. This process, as well as documents for submission, have been modified since our previous accreditation visit. For Cognia, standards are separated into 3 domains that you see listed on the slide: teaching and learning, leadership capacity, and resource utilization. Each domain has accompanying standards and concepts. This process is not merely about mastering a standard. It is about capturing our capacity in each domain and determining if the processes and procedures in place provide opportunities for continuous improvement that will have the direct impact on our student outcomes. Next slide, please. During our post-review in the spring of 2017, Advanced Ed provided 4 improvement priorities to guide our district in the improvement process for our next upcoming engagement review. These areas include development and implementation of procedures to systematically monitor and support instructional practices in all schools, systematically collect, analyze, and act on data throughout the year, centrally and at the school level, and ensure that all students have an advocate who knows them and can support them in their educational experience. Next slide, please. In the 2018-2019 school year, we launched our 5-year strategic plan. In January of 2020, this board unanimously adopted our addendum strategies. These strategies preserve the strategic plan priorities, goals, and benchmarks while lifting up with intention strategies impacting key student groups and communities. Our strategic plan and addendum strategies have provided the guidance for school-level school improvement plans and a clear guide for measuring the effectiveness of our efforts to best support the diverse needs of our community. This work is part of our improvement journey and has prepared us for the 5-year engagement review. Next slide, please. Throughout the past few years, we have had many areas that we are able to highlight as we work to continue to provide improvements for our students and our school community. In year 1 of our strategic plan implementation, we met or exceeded every benchmark. Some additional highlights include increased student academic performance, an increase in the number of schools earning an A or a B in performance grade, and a decrease in our identified low-performing schools, lowering the teacher turnover rate and increasing the number of Latinx teachers, all teachers receiving equity training from the Office of Equity and Fairs, the unanimous approval from our board of our equity policy and implementation of that policy, skilled trade academies in our 3-2-1 workforce initiative, the board unanimously approving our ability to transition to a 1-to-1 school district to support virtual and personalized learning, completing a comprehensive indoor air quality improvement project, which included upgrading over 8,000 filters and cleaning over 2,000 coils, creation of outdoor learning spaces, our excitement with new construction, Lions Farm, Northern High, and Elementary School F, and our capital improvement plan impacting renovations in 6 of our schools. Next slide, please. In April, we will participate in what Cognia describes as their 5-year engagement review. In the past, this review has been done in person, and most, if not all, of our schools were visited by a team of educators called reviewers. This year, our review will occur virtually. During our review, members of the team will explore our evidence and documentation that we submit to them, gather objective input through engaging in focused interviews and panel discussions to learn how our learners respond to their environment with the provided instruction. During the process, we have had access to an experienced Cognia mentor and support from our lead reviewer. This is our opportunity to connect the strategic work that we do at the system level and the school improvement work done at the school level. Next slide, please. This year, we began our process by ensuring that our stakeholders were aware of the engagement process and our timeline. We presented to our principals, assistant principals, teacher advisory, student advisory, as well as our parent advisory groups. Our strategic plan team has worked to align our strategic plan to the Cognia standards and develop a work plan to gather and analyze the data and evidence necessary to show DPS's continued improvement. Schools were responsible for submitting school assurances through the Cognia system, and in February, we submitted our compiled evidence. Throughout the month of March, we have been working with various stakeholder groups to ensure that they are prepared to engage in our focus groups and our panel discussions. Next slide, please. The engagement review will include representatives from all stakeholder groups. Dr. Mabinga will lead the review process with an address to the Cognia review team. This will include a data presentation from the superintendent's office as well as cabinet members. Our Board of Education will have the opportunity to engage in a panel review discussion with the reviewers as well. Our strategic plan team has worked to build a comprehensive crosswalk that aligns to the work that we do and the district Cognia standards. Through this framework, we were able to provide narratives as well as documents that supports the depth of our work towards making improvements that will positively impact our student outcomes. Next slide, please. The focus group and panel discussions will have representation from across the district. Day 1 will focus on district staff, principals, and community partners. The entire day 2 is comprised of teachers, parents, and students. And day 3 will be an opportunity for the team to review and deliberate regarding the evidence that they have had the opportunity to see and conduct a final interview with Dr. Mabinga. Next slide, please. At this time, we'll be more than happy to take questions from our board regarding our engagement review process that will occur in April.
Thank you, Dr. Hardy, for your presentation. Board members, are there any questions, discussion? Ms. Lewis.
I don't have any questions, but I want to provide feedback and just commend the team for the work that's happening. When I look at this and I know the engagement that has gone on and understanding the processes to get the best outcomes for our students, the whole system that's taking place for this to happen, it definitely shows this team is working hard to meet our goals. When I look at the places that the strategic plan has been implemented to help track and how we're meeting those goals, the only thing that comes to mind is stay ready so you don't have to get ready. It's already there. Great job. Thank you. Thank you for this presentation. We look forward to the accreditation process.
Any other comments for discussion from board members? Ms. Byer.
I just want to celebrate y'all's work and especially Ms. Ashley Stevens, who is leading this work. It is tedious but important. And so we hold both of those things to be true. We appreciate her attention to detail. It's going to be critical for this. It's going to be a different accreditation to be online and a virtual accreditation. But we're excited. We've got a lot to show off and we've got a lot to listen to and learn from. If community partners want to be involved, is there a way for them to express their interest in being part of that process?
We have worked both internally and externally to make sure that we have gathered and captured our community partners. If there are folks that want to make sure that they are on the list, feel free to either email our board clerk, Ms. Smith, or they can email me or Ms. Stevens directly.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Raven.
I'll just say thank you. It's a lot, you know, the devil's in the detail. It's a lot of work that goes into this. And I just want to say that I'm appreciative of everything that you all are doing.
Ms. Valladares.
I too, I want to commend DPS, all our administrators. Dr. Mabinga, thank you for, all the work. I look back to, our strategic plan, 2018 to 2023, and those 5 pillars of how we are supporting education and the whole child in all these priorities. And so I just want to thank you for that. And also Dr. Hardy, thank you so much for, for letting us know and about all this opportunity and Nicole for helping us sign up. I'm looking forward to our time meeting with these folks. Thank you so much.
I want to echo that appreciation. I remember participating in this process when we did it. It was in 2016, 2017. And so I'm looking forward to hearing the areas that we have improved. When I look at this list of things for priorities in 2017, I can think about programs that we have implemented to address each one of these strategies. And our improvement journey was just reminded and excited about the initiatives that we have put in place to meet the needs of our students. So looking forward to participating again and hearing the feedback from the accreditation organization. Dr. Hardy, is this just for information? Is that correct?
This is for information for our board and community. Wanted to make sure everyone was aware our engagement review begins on April 11th. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. With that, board, I'll take a motion to go into closed session.
I move that we go into closed session for the reasons stated in the agenda.
A second.
Thank you. Ms. Valladares, it's been moved and seconded by Ms. Lewis. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please use the same sign. Passes unanimously. We're now in closed session. We are now in open session. Dr. Mabenga.
Madam Chair, I'm here to seek your approval for the personnel report as discussed at the closed session.
I move that we approve the personnel report as discussed in the closed session dated March 24, 2022.
Second?
It's been moved by Ms. Lewis, seconded by Ms. Byer. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please use the same sign. It passes unanimously. And with that, we are adjourned.